Miriam, you're awesome at winging it. Thank you so much for making tonight possible. And thank you all of you who have made it to this sanctuary to listen to the presentation, and to those of you on Zoom. It's a pleasure to have the first opportunity to do this presentation since I got the training back in the spring. And Al Gore has been doing these climate reality trainings for, I think, a decade. And at one time in the beginning, they were done in person and people traveled to wherever that was taking place. And then with COVID, like everything else, it went virtual. And so the last few years, there have been trainings virtually, and I spent 2 days on a virtual training for this particular part of climate reality. The theme this year is to correspond with the laws that were passed last year. And so the theme is from acts to action. So we had the Inflation Reduction Act that was signed almost exactly 1 year ago today, a couple days ago. And then the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, which also has pumped lots of money into making our environment and our, well, it's more on the big business level than the IRA. The IRA is really exciting because you and I will have opportunities to take advantage of a lot of money that's being put together in that. So I have a little green pin. This is my climate reality pin. That means that I've been through the training and I feel like I'm part of the Battleship Galactica group or something in Star Wars. But no, this is just on Earth for climate reality. So this is a new policy that is giving us power. But you know, the reality is right now that desertification is expanding. Floods are more extensive. The glaciers are melting. Permafrost is thawing. Our land masses, we're finding out, are covered with flammable materials, and fires are raging. Heat waves are longer. And all of this is because of our industrial revolution, which has taken carbon out of the ground, those fossil fuels that have been stored there for millions of years. And we found out that we can extract incredible amounts of energy to do all the work that we used to do by hand. And in the process, that waste material is getting into our atmosphere and making it heavier and thicker. So what we've done is we've created a climate crisis. And there are two common responses that you hear right now, or you may feel, depending on what day it is, perhaps. And we're kind of in this place where denial is more than a river in Egypt, and despair is more than the tire in the trunk. But those two things people are feeling pretty extensively. So let's go to that first slide and think about where you might be on this pendulum of the climate. Are you positive? Are you feeling negative? Are you hopeful? Are you discouraged? Are you angry? Do you get tired just hearing about it all the time? Or do you feel energized by positive things going on around you? So those are a few of the things I know I feel from time to time. Sometimes I jump from one to another in the same day. Before we go forward, though, I want us to go back to about 1972. I didn't really think about it too much, but there were a lot of interesting things that happened back in 1972. We were just a couple years out from that first Earth Day in 1970. And there was a big national movement to improve the air and the water. We had the Clean Water Act passed in 1972. Remember DDT? It was banned in 1972. I turned 18 that year, and that was the year 18-year-olds were given the right to vote, 1972. It was also the year of the very last Apollo mission, Apollo 17. And Apollo 17 gave us an early Christmas present that year. You see, they took a picture, and this picture still gives me goosebumps every time I see it. That picture of Earth from space. Somehow or another, we as Earthlings, human Earthlings, realized how important, how small our planet was, how it really is covered the surface 3/4 with water. We realized that those clouds move all the way around or dissipate or grow, and the air from Canada can affect us, and the air from here can affect someone else. And we worked together quite well for a while. We fixed the hole in the ozone layer and many other things working together. All right, so surrounding that blue marble, and the diameter of our Earth is about 8,000 miles, is a thin sheet of air. The atmosphere itself, all the layers of the atmosphere, is about 60 miles thick, but the one closest to the surface of the Earth, the troposphere, is only about 5 to 9 miles thick. And this is where all the weather systems are located. This is where all of the gases are, the nitrogen, carbon dioxide, oxygen. And it's where, if you want to go on to the next slide, that blue color shows up from a distance. So there's another, that's an actual photograph again of the sun just coming up on the other side of the Earth, and you can see how thin that layer really is. So that layer also holds all the pollution. It holds the particulate matter from everything we've been burning. Next slide. And because of everything we're burning, we're spewing 152 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into that thin shell. Not every year, not every week, that's every 24 hours. That much is going into our atmosphere. And so in a way, this thin layer we're using like an open sewer. Next slide. So solar radiation hits the Earth in the form of light waves, and it passes through the atmosphere. And it should keep going. Oh, it didn't get all of them. Can we go back? There we go. And most of this radiation is absorbed by the Earth. Some of it is radiated back into space. Some of it is trapped by the atmosphere, and then it warms it. And as our concentration of CO2 increases, more of the outgoing infrared radiation is trapped. Okay, next slide. So most of the sources of greenhouse gas are man-made. So look at all of those there. I think if you might be able to start something on that too. We have, of course, our oil production, our transportation, our farming, landfills, the chemicals used in industrial agriculture. All of those industrial processes are using fossil fuels. So the biggest sources of greenhouse gases are those on that screen. Next slide. The largest source of global warming pollution is from the burning of those fossil fuels. And there you see how it has increased so significantly since the 1950s, or it goes back to 1850, I'm sorry, it's hard to see. But in the last 50 years, you can see how dramatic that increase has been. Next slide. And this is the departure from average. The blue are years where it was considered colder than the norm. And we're way over to the right where you can see it's basically off that chart where it's warmed up. You can go on, that's fine. So this is a little bit of an outdated slide, but 19 of the 20 hottest years as of 2019 were in those last 19 years, 19 of the 20, and I don't think it's changed any since then. And the hottest were the last 5 years. And now we have this year's statistics. July of 2023 was the hottest month ever recorded on our planet, going back to the mid 1800s when they first started keeping those records. And the month of July pretty much also was the month that in Phoenix they had 31 straight days in a row when the high temperature was over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Previous record was 18 days. Go ahead. A lot of the heat that we put in the air doesn't stay there. It's absorbed into the oceans. And that accounts for the increase you see on this slide. Again, it's very dramatically. It's half of the increase has been in the last 20 years. Go ahead. And because of that, the hurricanes can build quickly, become much more powerful because the water that they're building from is hotter. And so we might have thought that a hurricane would dissipate in the past, whereas now it's probably more likely to keep extra strength and cause more damage. Go ahead. We all know the hydrologic cycle, that water evaporates and then it condenses. And when it gets too heavy in the air, it precipitates out. And as it falls to the earth, it continues to flow till it finds the lowest point. And then with the heating, it evaporates once again. Go ahead. So a lot of that science is kind of sobering. The things that we're experiencing now makes us take a pause. It's not just humans that are suffering. It's life in general on our planet. Go ahead. For example, we've seen many floods. This was from 2015 in India. It's an example of how it displaces people and other living things. Go ahead. We know that Pakistan this year and the East Coast this year, China and Alaska have all had floods. So the same extra heat that evaporates more water from the ocean, causing bigger downpours and the bad floods we've had, also pulls more moisture from bare ground, and it causes longer and deeper droughts. So that extra heat just sucks it out. And an example in Brazil of how nasty the soil can look after it's been affected by the sun in that way. Just another little slide with some statistics. As it turns out, the years where we have more heat seem to be the years where we have more fires. So that's kind of a thing that we expect going forward. Go ahead. That's an example of some of the extreme weather catastrophes. I think I missed a slide, but that's okay. And you can see that it seems like it's a continuum of an increasing number of extreme weather events, and they become more expensive the more often they occur. Southwest Greenland, there's a glacier there. You can see it on the top as well as down in the valley. And then if you hit the somewhere, it shows you where it go back on up on that. And I think, can you go down? No, does it allow you to play from that screen? There it is. And there's summer of 2013. The declining ice mass is represented by that blue line. So Greenland's just one example of where that ice has declined in area as well as thickness. We're seeing a lot of changes. Go ahead. Oh, that text doesn't come in. Okay. Oh, let's see. Okay. No, I think we're good. Go on to the top 10 cities. So Miami is right there at the top of the cities in the world that stand to be impacted by the sea level rise. And you can see most of the rest of those are other parts of the world. But then if we look at it in a little bit different way by population, it shuffles out a little differently. And Miami isn't at the top, I think someplace in, India and other parts of the world that don't have the resources that we do have an even greater risk by their population. So let's see. The US Department of Defense, back in 2014, this was 9 years ago, they said, and it's been pretty prophetic, climate change will likely lead to food and water shortages, pandemic disease, disputes over refugees, and natural disasters in regions across the globe. Go ahead. And we're seeing when it's really hot that crops do not perform well. I know I'm out in St. Joe County where there's a lot of corn grown, and farmers know if it's upper 90s when that pollen is shedding and the silks are trying to get pollinated, it's not going to do as well as if it's in the 80s. So extreme heat is a problem for a lot of crops. Here's another quote: climate change is a medical emergency as well. Tropical diseases are on the move. You know, you think the tropics is that thin band along the equator. Well, look at these diseases and how they've spread to many parts, many temperate areas of our planet. Go ahead. And a mosquito can carry a lot of those diseases. We are at risk of losing 50% of all land-based species in this century. Probably a lot of you have heard about, we're probably in the 6th extinction, worldwide extinction is taking place around us right now. Go ahead. So, all those carbon. And the last thing, oh, there was one more line that was going to come up there. So it's an expensive thing, climate change. If we do nothing, it's going to be very, very expensive. So must we change? Yes. Can we change? Actually, we have solutions and they're available. They're ready to go. This is really a fascinating couple of screens here. Our projection back in 2000, not that long ago, worldwide wind capacity, 30 gigawatts. But by 2019, it was exceeded by a factor of 22 times. So wind generation has grown much more quickly than it was projected. Go ahead. And our capacity has also risen. Look at that. That's one of those hockey sticks, right? Where you see it grow. Just using wind alone, if we set it up right, we could supply our electricity needs 40 times over. Pretty amazing. And what about the solar piece, our other renewable energy big one? In 2002, they said it'll grow 1 gigawatt per year by 2010. That was the projection. But look at this. It was exceeded 121 times greater than that. That's the reality. That's a good one, right? Go ahead. And our photovoltaic installations worldwide, again, another hockey stick. It has increased tremendously. And the cost has made just the opposite change, from very high as recently as 1976, and it's down much, much below that today, down to about 25 cents per kilowatt or per watt. Some parts of the world where they've never had electricity, they can pay as you go with their initial little solar panel like that. And it makes it affordable for people to finally be able to have a little lights or do something that we take for granted. Go ahead. Chile, this one, I think you'll see how they had to increase the graph just to show the change in Chile alone. A lot of Chile is quite far south geographically. Like, we think we're too far north maybe, but the solar market has really expanded there. So enough solar energy reaches the earth every single hour, every 60 minutes. That would provide for all of our solar needs, the whole world, for a full year. So we have that power right outside our window. Go ahead. A lot of people are worried of that, well, we got to have storage. We can't do solar because it isn't, the sun doesn't shine all the time. How are you going to run your heater at night? Well, the storage capacity is growing, and it's projected to become even greater in the next 10 and 20 years. That piece is being addressed. Go ahead. LED lights, I think you may have been aware in the news. They have phased out the incandescent light bulb. So we're kind of stuck with LEDs, but they are much more energy efficient. And look at all the car manufacturers here who are creating their own car powered by electricity. Go ahead. So can we change? Yes, we can. Will we change? Question mark. We've got some incentives now to help us do it. Here's a picture of the People's Climate March in 2017, I believe. There's a big mass of people who want us to do the right thing to make energy a renewable resources. So we can join those who are using their voices, their votes, and their choices to fight the climate crisis. This is a repeat. Use your voice, use your vote and your choices so that we can speak truth to power like your world depends on it. Go ahead. Because it does. Our world depends on it. So going on, now we're going that's kind of the background. That's what brings us here. Now let's take a look at this moment that we are in right now. This is another moment like 1972, I think, where we have opportunities to really improve what's going on in our world, make it a safer environment, a cleaner environment, and kind of put the climate crisis in a little less scary position. So go ahead. Wherever you are, think for a moment or talk to your neighbor. Why do you think the Inflation Reduction Act is so important? And perhaps we need to know more about it so that we can answer that. But this is, go ahead, the biggest climate law ever. A year ago it was passed, and it has the potential to do more than anything ever before in the history of our country, the biggest climate law ever. And it gives the power to the people in ways that previous laws have not. Go ahead. So it allocates this $369 billion, but there are projections that it will be over $1 trillion of energy security and energy savings and energy expenditures all kind of wrapped into one. It's a big dollar amount. Go ahead. Go ahead. So yeah, the experts are seeing that, hey, a lot of people can take advantage of these tax credits, and so the cost will be higher to the government, the benefits will be greater to the people. And the goal, of course, is to reduce those emissions, and they project they will go down 40% by 2030, I believe, if all of this comes to fruition. Individual US households, they project, will save up to $1,800 by the year 2030 on average. The number of new jobs created, 9 million. And $50 billion per year saved in US energy expenditures. Those are big numbers. So that's where the Inflation Reduction comes from. We're going to be saving that money and using it in ways that benefit people. Go ahead. A lot of this slide is about how companies are able to invest in renewable energy. So you've been hearing about the projected battery plant, I believe it is, in Marshall. But there are several other things going on in Michigan. Michigan is kind of one of the leaders of all 50 states in taking advantage of these provisions in these laws. So the solar and wind, they're going to be investing. They're talking about investing in hydrogen energy production. And then the technologies that will allow us to shift to the electric vehicles and other electric appliances. Go ahead. So people like you told the Biden administration and your elected officials that it's time for local and state, yeah, the policymakers, thank you, to get the message. So people are talking, people are making their voices heard. A lot of different avenues of policy can be involved here. Our state legislators have a critical role. They can mandate a certain amount of clean energy. They can encourage more electric energy storage. Smart grids. We need a lot of improvements in our electric grid. And ensure that the utilities and our local officials, our state offices, excuse me, use the IRA funding that's out there. You may have heard, I understand DeSantis in Florida has said that they don't want the funds from the IRA. They're not going to use them. So we'll see how long that lasts. So the governors and state energy offices, every state has its own energy office, and that's going to be really important in one part of this IRA as it's being released. Go ahead. Public utility commissions, it's not a group that I think of very often, but they have lots that they can do. We can support the transition of communities that depend on fossil fuels so that they can switch over to renewables. Help connect the renewables to the grid. That will take thought and time and effort. And then talking the truth about carbon capture. Carbon capture may not be our best way to go. It gets some attention, and especially from fossil fuel entities. They're saying that, oh, we can capture this carbon, but the cost to do it kind of wipes out the benefit from it, at least at this point. Maybe there'll be a breakthrough. Go ahead. All right, so here's the nuts and bolts. What can we do? I'm going to go over some of the tax advantages and credits that are available to us, but we also need to educate our communities, whether it's a church group, whether it's a sporting group, whether it's your neighborhood coffee group. We need to start talking about this act so that we can take the action to make all the good things happen. It's for households, businesses, it's for everybody. And we can also advocate for local laws. The IRA is a federal law. And I think that we're going to get to a screen that shows Denver, Colorado has an additional benefit. And we could encourage Michigan to offer some additional benefits as well. So there's no cap on the amount of building electrification tax credits available to the public. So a tax credit, we're talking about your federal income tax. And this is not a tax deduction where you reduce your amount of income that you pay taxes on. This is a credit that is applied to the tax you owe at the bottom of your form. So if you come to the end of your tax form and you owe $6,000 for the year, which you may have already paid through regular deductions, that's where you can apply these tax credits of maybe $1,800, reducing your tax owed to the federal government. And if you've paid in extra, then you get that much more back whenever you file your taxes. Go ahead. Building decarbonization is where we're starting here. This is what we can do. So we have our structure, the windows, the insulation, the doors, and then we have all of the equipment that we use to run our homes and businesses. So the heating and the cooling, our cooking, and so on. Go ahead. Buildings account for 31% of our energy-related emissions in the United States. And these statistics all come from the Climate Reality Project research that is done. And somewhere there's a source that I can get for you if you want to know more. So if we increase the energy efficiency of our buildings and use less, then we can choose the fewer and better materials and switch to clean energy. You know, if your furnace or air conditioner is getting up there to 20 years old or more, there's a much more efficient option out there. Go ahead. So there's just a few of the ways, and these are specifically mentioned in the IRA. If you switch out a gas cook stove to an electric, there's a rebate. There's a credit, a tax credit for that. Same thing with older furnaces. If you go to heat pumps and geothermal products, all of those will qualify for these electric credits on your taxes. And there's a form, you just fill out the form and keep track of how much you spent, plot it in there, and it goes through. We put solar on our house last year and got the 30% credit. And I didn't have to show him anything. My tax guy just said, this is how much we spent, and he wrote it in on the form. So that's one that's not complicated at all. Go ahead. So upgrading our insulation and replacing it if it's not sufficient, windows, siding, weather stripping, solar systems, on-site battery, the right outlet to plug in your electric vehicle when you get that. And there are community solar initiatives that I'm not sure exactly what's available here in Kalamazoo, but I think it's probably quite likely there are some community initiatives that if you belong to a certain group, if you live in a condominium, they might be part of a solar initiative. So there's several different ways that we can benefit. There's the climate benefits, and that's kind of what the climate crisis wants us to think about. So we'll have less greenhouse gas emissions. And they say once we get this down, it will quickly balance out. It's not one of those it's going to take decades before we can reach an equilibrium that's livable, the 1.5 degrees Celsius. If once we get this down to where we're at net zero, it will quickly stabilize. Go ahead. The cost benefits, we've been trying to promote those here tonight, but it's generally cheaper to run an electric appliance over their lifetime than a fossil fuel. And just those energy efficiency changes can save the average household 25% on their energy costs. Rooftop solar can bring savings over that system's lifetime. Not too long ago, they said 30 years for a solar system on a home. Now they're saying 40 is pretty much a basic amount and likely to last longer than that. And then the rebates and the tax credits make it all more affordable. Go ahead. All right, justice. DEI stuff comes into play here with our climate reality and things that we do to help improve it. And the IRA is designed in a way that those who are on the lower economic spectrum can benefit in ways that they haven't been able to before. So we talked about the tax credits, but another piece of the IRA is for upfront rebates. So people that can demonstrate their income is at 80% of the median for the area, or even up to 150% of the median income for the area, are going to qualify for these rebates. And when they go to their big box store or your contractor that you buy from, you show them your income, and that they'll just take that amount off the cost, because coming from the federal government through our state, they will be reimbursed for the difference in that cost. So it's not going to affect them financially, the businesses, but it's going to benefit the low income people. This is one of those controversial things that came up earlier this year, the gas stove, but statistically, 1 in 8? Yes, 1 in 8 cases of childhood asthma, they say, is developed because of the exposure to a gas cooking stove or other gas appliances in the home. And the new electric cooktops boil faster, simmer more consistently. Once you have them, and I don't yet, but they're supposed to be really great. And I've discovered, I haven't gone looking for them, but you don't have to buy a whole big 4-burner cooktop. You can buy a single one of these. Go ahead to the next slide. The induction cooktop. You can buy just a single unit. So if you're a renter, you can leave the gas stove alone, go out and buy, I guess they're $100 or something. I don't know exactly, but you can buy an induction burner. Just have that one burner that you can take with you if you know you're not going to live where you're at for very long. So it uses much less energy during cooking. And I really like my air fryer for the same reason. I think it cooks a lot faster and with a lot less energy than my big oven. Go ahead. Now these heat pumps are incredible. The technology has gone from okay to amazing for those of us in northern climates. At one time, when it got really cold in the winter, some of these products just kind of lost their oomph and didn't produce much. But they can get heat out of exterior air that's 10, 20 degrees below zero and still use it to heat your home. That's a technology that has grown incredibly in the last 20 years. And they dehumidify better in the summer than your standard air conditioner. So more cooling comfort if you know, these units are heating and cooling, and they dehumidify in the summer, and they're not very big. They don't take up much space at all. So they're pretty amazing. Battery electric vehicles, much less expensive to maintain. You don't have to change any oil or well, maybe I better not say, I don't know that much about combustion engines, but it's a lot less expensive to maintain them. Go ahead. All right, so here's some numbers. And this is the rebate. This is what we don't know exactly yet because it has to be determined at the state level in our state energy office. And if I know Gretchen and the leaders at our state level, they're going to have it ready to go as quickly as possible. But this is what it's going to offer those in those lower income brackets. So $8,000 rebate for a heat pump, air conditioner, heater. Now, if you can find one that's less than that or up to $8,000, it'll cover the entire cost of it. For those homes that require maybe a bigger unit, it might not pay the entire amount, but it makes a big dent in the cost. And then just for the water heater, it's $1,750 up to that. Clothes dryers, they even have the heat pump clothes dryers. And a lot of people will need to upgrade their box, their electric box, wherever you have all of your circuits coming in. And there's even money in this program for that to help pay for upgrading your electric box and your electric panel, the wiring, so on and so forth. Some of our older homes definitely need that. Go ahead. And then this is the other side of that coin. This is the tax credit, which is available now. For those of you that know you're going to be paying taxes to the federal government, income taxes, you can invest in these systems now. You do not have to wait. It's available for the entire year, 2023. And those are the types of tax credit amounts they're telling us you will qualify for. The system is set up so that you might do one thing a year. You can't go out and do all of that and get that much tax credit. But there are programs, and we'll get to that in a minute, that will help you decide where to start. And so, yeah, if you want to do the credit, you need to make sure you're going to owe money. Make sure you save your receipts. And there are some, it's kind of like they're not Energy Star appliances. There are some older heaters on the unit, heaters on the market that are not up to the high standards. So you need to just make sure that whatever you invest in is of the high energy efficiency so that you'll qualify for this. Another place you can start is with a home energy audit. Some electric companies do that, some private businesses do that, but there is even a tax incentive where you can get that paid for. And that will show you where you can invest first and have the biggest bang for your buck, get the best benefit. So I'm trying to show you that the rebates and the credits are going to be for different people, but there's also things in the program that benefit special groups. For example, the tribal electrification program, where some Native American tribes are going to get investments to help them put electricity into places where people have lived without it. So it will benefit some of these groups that have been discriminated against over the time of our country. Go ahead. So there are some gaps in the law that states may be able to pick up the difference. And there's more that we can do to make sure the benefits are available to everyone. The credit is unlimited as far as how many dollars of income tax credit will be available. But right now, the rebate from the federal government, it's a big amount of money. It's $9 billion that is already designated for these rebates. But if people really apply for it, that will get used up quite quickly. So we're hoping that either that can be expanded or states and municipalities, City of Kalamazoo, could offer some credits. I think we missed a slide because there was one about Denver, Colorado, which has its own special program where residents in that, I thought it was a long ways back. Good job. So the City of Denver has additional rebates for people who live there. So they can get the federal rebate, they can get the city rebate, and perhaps a state rebate as well. And I think they're stackable so that people can really take advantage of a lot of different things. Go ahead. So there are places you can go to help you pick information and where you want to start. I really like the Rewiring America, I think is the one here on the bottom. I've been on that site several times, and it has a chart you can work through, plug in your income, play around with it, and decide what you want to do this year, what you want to do next year, and all the way through the next 8 to 10 years if you need to make that many changes. Is there anyone that has 100% electricity in their home and a car that runs on electric? Is there anyone? Yeah, we got all kinds of potential, right? Because the goal with this IRA is basically to electrify everything, because that's the only way we're going to quit burning fossil fuels. Go ahead. So it's up to you now to figure out where you want to start. This is a place where you get to flex your consumer muscles and spend something that's actually going to be beneficial for the planet. So take a look at what's in your home. What can you replace? Get the estimates, start looking around, start thinking about where you might begin on this new dive into a new energy future, where we can feel good about what's happening and not be between denial and despair. We have hope. So the climaterealityproject.org, Acts to Action. You can join the campaign, and they'll send you regular updates on new things coming out, changes in the projection. And Michigan has several My Energy, forgot exactly what it's called, but the Michigan Health and Human Services has programs for low-income people. And there's also something that Governor Granholm put in effect shortly after she was first elected to start us making plans for how Michigan can be ready for what's coming ahead of us in the climate crisis and climate response, I think is what I would like to say there. Let's see, I've kind of completely lost track in my, here we go. Oh, yes. So between what you do for yourself and thinking about how you might help others. So the diversity, equity, and inclusion that a lot of us want to participate in that, I think it's kind of an interesting thing about how can we help our neighbor understand how they can benefit from this. Because for too long, all of these newfangled things that have been developed, usually it's just the wealthier people that can take advantage of them. How many of my friends drive a Prius like I do, but I know a lot of my neighbors that would not be possible. They're driving my old vehicle that maybe got 10 miles per gallon. So this is an opportunity for us to help everybody benefit and save money. The will to take action is a renewable resource. So I'd like to leave you with that thought, that our will we can renew over and over again, and we have the power to take action. So with that, if there are any questions, I will try to answer them.
So if we're going to hold on a second, and I'm going to get the Zoom crowd up on this big screen here, so that they can also ask questions if they want to, right? And then I'd ask that you speak your question into the microphone so the people on Zoom can hear you. So in the room or in Zoom, if you have.
Very beginning of the little song with electricity. That's the elementary science teacher in me. I just thought it was a little way to warm us up.
No, go ahead. Any questions? Oh, we have one over here.
Do you know the time frame for when the rebates will come online, and how are we going to know that that's available?
I have been asking that question to the people above me on a somewhat regular basis. What the general answer to that is, it's supposed to be announced by the end of 2023 or the beginning of 2024. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be kind of like the healthcare system. Remember how hard it was when that first came out for the, what's the word I'm trying to say?
Obamacare.
Obamacare. There were some glitches in that. It took a while to get past some of that, and then it's working really well now. And I'm sure there'll be some of that with this program too. And so the thing that the climate reality people don't know is how individual states are going to quickly or slowly respond, if at all, to this offer. So we'll just have to keep watching. And I think I get something weekly from the governor's office, and when it's announced, I think they will make a big deal of it. So here in Michigan, we should be ready to go. That's the thing, is when it is announced that you can do it, be ready to decide where you're going to spend it and try to take advantage of it.
I have a question which I never see addressed, so maybe it's not a legitimate question, but there are lots of car battery factories being built around the country. And my question is, these batteries use a metal, and I wonder if there's any discussion about whether that metal is exhaustible. I mean, the more metal, the more of that, forget the name, I don't know why I can't think of the name of it.
Lithium is
Lithium, yeah.
one, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Mhm.
But is there any discussion at all that you've heard about how long lithium is going to last? Because it seems to me with all these big car batteries that we're exhausting metal that has to be limited.
I'm trying to pull things out of my brain because I've been reading so much lately. For one thing, recently I've heard that at least 95% of the battery material is recyclable. So we've made some big gains on that recently. There used to be a lot of waste in batteries, but now 95% of it is, they claim they can recycle. And I also think they are finding an alternative to lithium that's going to be less of a problem. That's, I think, still in the development stages, but knowing that there are engineers working on it, I'm confident that something better is going to come along.
Is there a question in the chat? Hold on a second. We're trying to get somebody on Zoom. Is there, nope, just a comment? All right, all right.
What can you say about the political challenges that the IRA faces in the future?
There's always going to be somebody against everything, you know, that's the denial piece that we're dealing with. And I believe as long as a lot of us are talking about the benefits and demonstrating in our own way, from our own personal experience, especially how this is impacting things in a positive way, I think that's going to really reduce the impact that those who think that we shouldn't be spending this money will, that influence will diminish. We can't say for 100% sure, I guess, but I am quite sure that the majority of Americans don't support the policies of one of our political parties, and because they, you know, they've lost by the majority of votes. And as long as we continue to show how we're making a difference, I think we can move forward without too much concern. But we can't be idle. We gotta take action. I don't know if that helps, but it's the best I've got.
Was there a question on Zoom?
I haven't seen any. I've been monitoring, so.
So my question is, it has to do with the power grid. I mean, all this electrification that we're talking about, I think is wonderful, but what are they doing to upgrade and make the power grid safe?
We all want to know, right? And it's not lost. If you check out, remember Jennifer Granholm, former governor here in Michigan, and she's now the Secretary of Energy for President Biden. And her department is working on that deeply. And some of the money in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, there's a big chunk of money there that's being spent to address that type of problem. But that's also another reason why these more localized solar units can help us get through this area that we're in, where we know we're making this big demand increase of electricity. And is there going to be enough available? Well, if our local families put solar on their house, if more communities have community solar projects, that's going to take a little bit of the pressure off of the main power grids. So another reason why what we do can make a difference, but they are working to address the bigger scale issues too.
This is Eric. I was just going to comment that there's some really creative storage approaches that are coming online, all sorts of really amazing technology. And one is, as we add more electric cars, they're finding that electric cars can be a huge energy storage system. And so when you have off-peak hours, you're charging your car at night. Once it can continue to fully charge, you're actually having battery energy storage at night when the grid isn't used too much, and it's going to help in that power spikes during the day. So there's some creative solutions out there that I think are going to help reduce the impact on our overall grid. The grid obviously has to be improved, but I think they're realizing it's not going to be as bad as it once was because of all these storage options that are coming online.
And I think also, Eric, does this ring a bell? That during power outages, if you have an electric vehicle that's fully charged, you can use it to power certain things in your home. And I see a couple of people nodding their
Yeah.
head.
California is passing some really great bidirectional power laws to really make that something that everyone can use. And they really need it because they have, with the wildfires and everything, they have a lot of brownouts. So yeah, that is definitely, so a lot of the car manufacturers are really pushing for that as well and creating those bidirectional batteries.
So you won't need a separate generator at home. You'll have
No.
your car.
No. And I think it will be quieter.
So Carol, thank you very much for doing this tonight. When it comes to rooftop solar installations, you mentioned that you had one installed last year.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that's the equivalent of consumers reports for companies that people can go to first to get quotes from?
I think it's probably very dependent on your locality. There are several that I think are good companies here, and I don't feel like this is the right venue to try to just throw those names out, but afterwards I could tell you what I've heard from others. One of the challenges for us is, my husband and I, our electric use wasn't that great to begin with, and current Michigan law only allows you to put in enough solar panel potential production to meet 95% of your electric use over a 12-month period. So we might have wanted to put in twice as much as we did, and then we could have sold more back on the grid, but that wasn't allowable. We could only put in so much. And so that made the cost of our installation go up because the cost per kilowatt hour was based on how many panels we had, which isn't very many, if that makes sense.
Hold on, here's Mike.
Just an aside, I have a couple of people I've worked with that put the solar in, but the utility companies are not buying any excess back at any reasonable amount of money.
Yeah.
In other words, they won't give you what they charge.
That's for sure.
And that's where that policy piece comes in, and our job as citizens to lobby, as a climate citizen lobby perhaps, our elected officials to make sure that they change the laws that are keeping us from making progress. Any questions?
And even without that payback, it's still worth it to install that renewable energy power.
So she just said some magic words, which is why I am here. One of the best, of course, the IRA, indulge me to make a few comments, if you will, please. I'm sorry. Of course, the IRA is about actions that individuals can take, but we know we have more power when we join together in organizations, such as the Climate Reality Project, which I strongly advocate people learn about and pay attention to. We also have 2 local organizations that people might be interested in becoming involved with. One is Citizens Climate Lobby, which is a national organization, and we have a local chapter here in Kalamazoo. The other is the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition, and the Unitarian Church here is an affiliate of the Climate Crisis Coalition. So I would be happy to share more information about those organizations with you for those who are here tonight. Thank you.
I'm really glad that you are here representing those groups. I think that's absolutely right. Our interconnectedness is a big part of making all of this work for us. By the way, if you didn't pick it up when you came in on the back desk, there is a flyer that has some information on a couple of the slides that were up there on how individuals can take advantage of the IRA. And I think, is it available for the Zoom people?
Yep, I dropped it in the chat for people who are on Zoom. There's also a link to Rewiring America and some other links that you might want to check out to help you get the information that you need. At the back table, there's also a sign-up sheet if you want to get a recording of this presentation where we recorded it on Zoom, and we can send it out if you want to kind of listen to it. We apologize that the slide presentation in here wasn't very good, but we're having some strange technical problems where it would not play the slideshow for me. So if you need to zoom in and look at the slides a little bit more closely at home, you can sign up in the back page. If you're on Zoom, you're going to get it automatically because I have your email addresses, so you don't have to worry about it if you're on Zoom.
And if this was information that seemed new or unique or special or whatever, I am willing to make the presentation at other places with other groups, and it'll get better the more I do it. So I think. Let me know if you would like that. Any other questions?
I think we are done. Thank you so much, Carol, for being here and sharing this information with us.